The following was recorded during the COVID-19 pandemic through Zoom meetings in accordance with local health guidelines. Hi, I'm Mike Maloney, and welcome to another CSRM podcast. Today's episode is hosted by Dr. Greg Linville.
Welcome back to another CSRM podcast, our second time with a good friend, Bryce Johnson of Unpackin It Ministries. Bryce, welcome back.
Oh, great to be with you, Greg. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we've had some good times together, not the least of which was our previous podcast. We talked a little bit about what's happening culturally with sport. Last time, we're talking about how COVID has impacted. If you want to pick up on some of that conversation, that's what we just did. We're talking this time a little bit more about how you, as a Christian sports fan, and or you as a local church sports rec fitness minister, can get more intimately connected with Unpackin It and the ministries that are there and the opportunities that are there. So, Bryce, I know that you and I sat at the Reach gathering a couple years ago,
Yes.
Maybe more than that, maybe a few years ago now.
Yeah.
And you had this vision, and you were starting to roll out a lot of what you're doing today with even some fantasy football leagues that some churches said, man, did I need that during COVID because we couldn't actually get out and play football. But tell us kind of the scope of Unpackin It in general, and then hone it down into how can a church get involved, or how can an individual get involved with you?
Absolutely. So we're a community of sports fans following Jesus, and we enjoy sports and want to take opportunities to help each other grow in our faith and experience fellowship. And so we do that with small groups and different events and gatherings as sports fans. And we'll do sports trivia nights and virtually and in person. We've got a men's conference that we do, and other kind of events. We're based in Charlotte that we do a lot of those things. And then we do virtual stuff as well with sports fans around the country. And so as a huge sports fan myself, one of the ways that I've always experienced connection and fellowship has actually been through playing fantasy football. And so I mentioned it on the last podcast, but I was cut from my 8th grade football team. So that was the end of my playing career. But when I was a senior in high school, a Young Life leader invited me to join his fantasy football league. And it was like, are you kidding me? This is a thing. I get to watch games and put together a lineup of my players, and you draft, and then you get to compete against other people that put players in their lineups. I'm like, this is the best. And so I ended up winning the first league that I ever played in. And it doesn't mean that I've won everyone since, but I did win that first one. So I got hooked on fantasy football. I just loved it and was able to connect with my Young Life leader through that, and then ended up starting a league with my high school buddies. Well, we've now been in that league. We're going into our 18th year, which is just crazy. And so we've been playing, year after year. We get together in the summer to draft. And so what I recognized was, okay, if my league has experienced the relationship building and the fact that we're still connected all these years later, are other leagues enjoying that as well? And I think the reality is many leagues are. But then I started wondering from a ministry perspective, all right, I want people to know Jesus. I want them to experience him and fellowship in meaningful and purposeful ways. And so I was like, all right, Lord, how do we incorporate fantasy football with faith? And so he gave me this vision. And so what ended up happening was, so I wrote the Fantasy Football Fellowship Playbook. And what it does is it takes a fantasy concept, something like trades or the waiver wire or setting a lineup or draft day, and relates it to a biblical concept and a biblical principle. And so it's filled with Bible verses and questions for leagues to discuss. So you discuss the fantasy aspect and then how that relates to the Bible. Because here's the thing. A fantasy league is a built-in small group. It's already there. There's already 10 guys or 10 girls in a league. And so basically I said, all right, you're already connected. You're already keeping up, especially during the fantasy season. Well, why not intentionally get together, and we'll give you the, here's ideas and things to talk about when you get together. And so you play fantasy and grow in your faith throughout the entire season.
Hold up the book again, because this is something that you want to get, whoever's listening. And if you're not watching this and you can't see the book, then get home and put this podcast on and watch it. And all of the contact information, all the ordering information is coming up on the screen. But if you want to get this, go to the CSRM website, go to Unpacking It's website, and you can get this and you can actually join in this. And Bryce, let me tell you that for many years, by the way, I was on Young Life staff for about 15 years. And so we have a commonality there. And a lot of what you and I do today, I'm sure, is based on some of the things that were taught to us then. But not going down that rabbit trail, back to the other one. And that is that at a church, we did for many years a fantasy baseball league. And people said, well, how can that be spiritual? Well, what you just said, guys bonded. And I'm still in relationship with some of those guys, but it didn't stop there.
Yeah.
Because in order to be in the league, you had to commit to daily pray for one of the guys on your roster. Had like a 25 or 30 man roster. You had to pray for one guy every day. And then you had to write to them one time during the season, telling them that you were praying for them. You were in this fantasy league at this church and you were praying for them. And then we gave materials to send, to mail to these guys.
Wow.
I mean, it was powerful. And so this is another way the churches can do this. Keep going. Tell us other things about that, or other things about unpacking it.
Yeah, no, I love that idea. And so basically, because I'm a church guy and grew up in the church and realized that this idea of having church fantasy football leagues fits in so well. It fits into the overall, whether it's the life group model or whether it's under the church and sports rec side of things. Either one works, or even the youth pastors. So to me, it fits in because we grow in community, we grow in small groups, and what a just an easy entry point to invite some guys in the church to say, hey, do you want to play in a fantasy football league? We're going to draft at the church, and so that night you can have a devotional. You can pull from our book, and so we've got you set up from the draft through the championship. We've got videos, we've got other ideas. Similar ideas, kind of what Greg's saying. One of our challenges is when you're in fantasy, you're matched up against somebody. So it's me and my brother. We're going head to head. Well, what if you actually reach out to the person that you're going up against that week and say, "Hey, what's going on? How's family life? What can I pray for you about? How can I encourage you?" And then you can talk a little trash and say, "Hey, I'm going to beat you in fantasy." But you make that touch point throughout the week. And so if you're in a league of, like me, I'm in 13 other guys are in my league. So each week there's one guy that I can reach out to and be intentional with. And so as a church leader, you can empower the commissioners of the fantasy leagues. And so that's kind of how we've designed it, because the commissioner is the one that really kind of rallies the guys together, the fantasy owners, and puts together all the league settings and that sort of thing. And so either that commissioner or he's able to identify someone in his group that can lead what we call league meetings. And so these are the weekly meetings where you get the league together to talk fantasy, faith, and life. And that can be done in person at the church. It can be, in someone's basement. It can be on before Monday Night Football or before Thursday Night Football. You meet for 30 minutes, an hour. Doesn't have to be crazy, but it's an entry point. And then you can watch the first half together. And so anyway, jump in, Greg.
No, and in the league we ran at the church, it was recommended that a parent and a child do it together. It was most often fathers and sons.
Yep.
There's a bonding that happens father to son or father to daughter, whatever.
Yep.
But then those sons, they got connected and they started playing ball together. And my son is still in strong relationship with a lot of those guys. They've been in each other's weddings.
Wow.
They're helping each other. Now they're navigating kids. They're having, so it's our grandkids. So there's just, when you talked about it being a small group, I'm gonna, whoever's watching this, just look at right in my eyes right now. Are you missing this?
Yeah.
Are you gonna miss that? You've been saying, you've been praying. Some of you have been out there praying, saying, God, what should I do? God's telling you right now. Get involved with Unpacking It. Get this fantasy thing going. And I'm telling you, it is small group on steroids. It really is. So what else is Unpacking doing it? Give us some of the other things.
Well, I was going to say, so within Fantasy Football Fellowship, so you can check out the website, fantasyfootballfellowship.com. We actually have league kits and church kits. And so the book, as well as just a bunch of ideas and ways to use this ministry tool. So whether you're experienced with fantasy football or not, we'll try to come alongside you and help you maximize what really is such a popular activity. And it's only growing. And so you can talk about maybe even other sports viewing going down. Fantasy football is through the roof. I mean, people love it. They're following it. They're participating in leagues. So what if all these leagues were being run through your church, or you were able to rally guys that are maybe even coaches within some of your rec leagues and or some of your church leagues. And so your soccer leagues, all that sort of thing. Those are opportunities, I think, for the church to really tap into it. So I'm passionate about it. Of course, the football season is coming up. And so we'd love to see churches host drafts and have a draft party where, it's a couple hours where you're drafting players, and the camaraderie and the conversations that come in that atmosphere is really cool. And then throughout the season to be able to consistently connect and get together, I think is awesome. So anyway, that's.
I'm gonna have to ring your bell here because I don't see any Cleveland Indian stuff on your table there. But other than that,
here we go.
Oh, well, see, now you got it buried. Put it up front and center, man.
There it is.
It's got to be right there.
My grandpa was an Indians fan, so
there you go.
I got you covered. You covered.
Tell us about. You said something about a luncheon.
Yeah. So with Unpacking It, we do a virtual lunch. So on noon on Wednesdays, Eastern, sports fans around the country. We got guys in Phoenix to Seattle to New York to different places, Philadelphia. And it ends up being a smaller group, and different guys come in different weeks. But we get together and I pray for the guys. They share. I mean, honestly, a couple guys have some major stuff going on right now, but we personally, we come together. And so we share that kind of stuff, but then we get to talk about the big stories in sports. And it's so fun because guys are in different parts of the country. I'm in Charlotte. I don't always know what's going on in Philly or New York and what the real fans think and say. And so it's kind of fun. It's just it's an interesting atmosphere where we get to get into some fun conversations that then lead to more serious conversations. And so, like I mentioned, I write a devotional that takes a current sports story and relates it to the Bible. Well, we'll unpack one of those devotionals, and then other guys can chime in and give their thoughts and how they relate to the topic. So that's called the Unpacked Lunch, and people can email me, Bryce@unpackingit.com, if they ever want to be a part of that. So it's a good time.
Okay, for my good friend Rich Green, you got to know Rich Green, longtime sports guy out of Indiana and then Texas. Man, this guy has never lived in Northeast Ohio, but he is the #1 Cleveland Browns fan in the world.
Wow.
So for Rich Green and all the Rich Greens of the world, well, how are the Browns going to do this year?
What's funny is I saw the headline, Travis Kelce, the tight end for the Chiefs, he was calling the Browns a contender. And so that's a big deal for another player on another team to take notice. But I think they're building the right way. And the fact that last year they took such a big step, and then they get OBJ back healthy. Yeah. I don't know how they kept Kareem Hunt to go with Nick Chubb. So they've really got the best 1-2 punch as running backs. Baker Mayfield, just don't turn the ball over, and I think he'll be okay. So they don't even need him necessarily to be a superstar because they got enough players around him. So anyway, they should be tough.
There you go. There you go. What do you see in the future for Unpacking It? Where are we going here? And tell us again, how would you imagine a local church being able to grab hold of the fan?
So I think with the sports ministries at churches, I think opening up their minds to realize that all these dads especially are coming to watch their kids, and some are coaching, some are not, but they're sitting in the crowd and they're supportive of their kids. But a lot of those guys happen to be sports fans as well. And so to me, there's such an opportunity to open up doors and open up ways for them to get connected and plugged in. And so here at Unpacking It, we've got a lot of those ways, from our packs, our small group model that you could implement at your own church. We've got kind of a layout and resources to help with that. Our devotionals can be used. They're probably not geared for kids necessarily, but they could be reworked for kids. Like I write for the average fan, whatever age he is, just kind of an average sports fan. But those guys in the crowd specifically would probably identify with that. And so there's a lot of opportunity to utilize some of that content. And then also, so I host a podcast and I interview athletes and coaches, and a lot of that content could be encouraging to the coaches within your sports ministry as an added resource. And hey, go listen to this interview with Tom Allen, the head coach at Indiana, and how he runs his program. And you could probably glean some incredible insight into even how you would run an 8-year-old soccer team, and some ways to pour into them. And then of course with Fantasy Football Fellowship, that's probably at this moment the best way for a church to utilize kind of some of the content that we have and the resources that we have to reach the fan in your congregation and within your sports ministry.
Time goes by so fast. This has been fascinating to be with you, and it's as I mentioned earlier in the first podcast, it's so wonderful to see how God has blessed you, taken this vision to another level. It seems like almost every other year there's another level that God's taken you to, and we just celebrate with you, and we're so happy, and we want to continue to link arms. Of course, again, you can go to our website, either one of our websites, grab hold of how you can get this book, how you can get some of the other resources, how you can get connected. In the last minute, you've got a special joy that's coming your way. That's an answer to prayer. Give God a little cred and also reach out to your wife just a little bit, eh?
That's right. So my wife and I, so a few years ago, we had a miscarriage and walked through that very difficult journey. And then 2 years ago, we gave birth to our first daughter, and here we go again. God blessed us again. And so we've got daughter number 2 coming in August, and they'll, Lord willing, they'll be 2 years apart. So if all comes together in August, they'll be 2 years apart. And I'm all in on being a girl dad. I love it. So I'm, sports ministry, oftentimes I look through the lens of being a guy and hanging out, camaraderie and all that. But I'm going to be raising 2 daughters that are sports fans, and we'll see if they're athletes as well. But I know they'll be watching some games with me. And so little Maddie, I already tell her, all right, we got basketball on the TV. We got to take a look. So it's a lot of fun. So I'm excited for daughter number 2.
Love it. And you can pass on to those girls when they are of the age to understand it. You had some people really praying for you, for them, and that they've been prayed for. And that's part of this network that we have, that part of this sports outreach community that you and I are part of, and we rejoice together in these things. Thanks, Bryce, for being with us. Can't thank you enough, and can't thank you enough for what you do on a daily basis for our Lord and Savior and for his kingdom and church around the world. Well, make sure that if you've missed the first podcast with Unpacking It, that you certainly get and watch that, and then also pass this on to others and let other people know that they can have their church get involved. They can individually get involved. And again, Bryce, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Greg. Really appreciate it. And yeah, would love to connect with anybody. You can email me, Bryce@unpackingit.com. Would love to hear from you.
All right, that's it for now. We'll talk to you on the next CSRM podcast. Bye now.
The CSRM podcast is a production of the Association of Church Sports and Recreation Ministers and their video production house, Overwhelming Victory Flix. Dr. Greg Linville is the executive producer, and Andrew Fouts is associate producer and editor. For more information about CSRM, visit csrm.org. For more information about Overwhelming Victory, visit overwhelmingvictory.org. The CSRM podcast is the flagship member of a new podcast network called Overwhelming Victory Radio. For more information on Overwhelming Victory Radio or to listen to our partner podcasts, visit overwhelmingvictory.org/OV radio. For CSRM Podcasts, I'm Mike Maloney. Have a blessed day.